Hello, I'm Andrew Gentile.
And I'm Mariana.
And you're listening to Behind the Flicks. This show is all about me sharing as many facts as I know about filmmaking and directors and behind-the-scenes info about movies and whatnot to Ariana. And you'll join us for the ride. Our guest today is a screenwriter and graduate of the New York Film Academy. He has interned at XYZ Films and Aperture Entertainment, and we're thrilled to have him on today's episode. Please welcome Michail Eggelhoefer. Michail, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Really good, excited to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully, thank you. A little nervous. For those, I edited out the where I mispronounced Mikhail's name, so take two on that one.
Trust me, I remember first.
Well, I'll try my best. Michail, would you be able to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Thailand. My mom's actually Malaysian and my father's English and German. I moved about 24 times, 7 countries, 5 states, and I'm moving back to London in a month, actually.
Oh my gosh, why did you move so much?
Part of it was my dad's job, and then part of it was I was a little bit of a troubled teen, and then after that it was itchy feet, and at a certain point I didn't know how to stay in one place.
Yeah.
I went to the University of Edinburgh for my undergrad, and I think I mentioned this in an email, but in my first week I was hung by a group of racists.
Yeah.
And impaled.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a scar here. And so fell into, so this is going to be very deeply personal. My apologies if that's
No.
Share whatever you want to share. I mean, I'm fascinated. I'm here for you.
Yeah, no, I'm very open about it. So I woke up in the morning with a broken nose, my skin flapping around, and then just my underwear and fractured ribs and a concussion. And so I kind of spent the next several years just drinking myself into oblivion. And eventually got sober, and came out to LA to try and actually do something I enjoyed for once. Because I think once I got sober, I realized, I hate everything I'm doing with my life. And yes, I started an MFA program out here, screenwriting. And it was awesome. I called my parents after the first week of classes, being like, "Hey, did you know you can enjoy what you do every day?" And they were like, "Yes, dumbass." So that's what we've been trying to tell you for years. And then I graduated in August. I've got a couple projects going. I have a limited series I'm working on that I optioned. Obviously not working now during the strike, but and then I've done a few rewrites, and I have a web series episode that's in post-production.
That's awesome. That's a decent little list for somebody fresh off graduation. I mean, you really went for it.
Yeah, I one of the benefits of having spent 6 or 7 years sort of as an addict and alcoholic is you get to come out of it and being like, I'm going to do all the work now. Just replace it with that instead.
Yeah.
And so what made you want to pursue the screenwriting path?
It's funny. My mom was the one who actually suggested it. Because she was like, "You're miserable. Why not? If you're going to because I tried a few different things. Did the psychology thing. I worked for a charity. I was a trainee teacher for primary school kids at one point. And none of them fit. And she pointed out how much I love TV and film. And she said, "Why don't you actually try doing that?" And I noticed that I found it really interesting the way people's perceptions work and change over time, and what that means for a story.
Yeah.
So the one that I use now, to bring up an example that sort of I already mentioned, at the time when I got hung, it was the worst experience of my life.
Yeah.
But without that, I don't get sober. I don't meet my current partner. I don't find this career. And it's not possible without that. And so, I love the idea that there's just all this cool stuff that's so much more complex than it seems in the moment, and you can like try and explore that with stories and
The hero's journey.
exactly. Plus, I'm not really very good at anything else, so
I feel the same way about me. Yeah, I can relate. If you don't mind my asking, so you decide to go to the New York Film Academy. So how do you get from the New York Film Academy to having these projects in development?
So I went to the LA campus.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we had at the end,
I didn't realize there was more than one campus.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm a little
opposite the country here.
I know, right? It's the you say New York Film Academy and then you say in LA, and everyone gets really confused.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead, sorry.
it's all good. Yeah, so we had a pitch fest at the end of the course, and so we invited a bunch of people from agencies and production companies and management companies, and a few things happened from that. I pitched to a bunch of people, and so I got a few read requests from a couple of agencies, and I also met Tracy, who you both know.
Lovely.
Yeah, no, she's great, and she's friends with one of my classmates, and so my classmate introduced me, and I emailed her, I think a week later, being like, "Hey, can we go grab coffee?" Yeah. And it was meant to be like 30 minutes, and we ended up spending 8 hours just talking about it. Like,
Holy mackerel!
We could copy and paste that.
Yeah.
Our meeting of Tracy too.
Exactly.
So wonderful and like willing to give her time. It's cool that
and especially
we have similar experiences with her.
Yeah, no, exactly. She's really good and really open to reaching out, and so through that, like I started talking to her, and at the same time, a friend was looking for a script to option for his course and for his pitch fest, and so I optioned it to him because at the time nothing was happening with it, and then he got someone that very interested, and so we had a meeting in that and converting that pilot into a limited series. Tracy and I started talking about projects that we could work on, and I actually put a script on the Blacklist website.
Nice.
And before it had been evaluated, I got like a phone call from someone who downloaded it and read it. And he was just like, "Yeah, like, are you interested in working on this treaty for a feature in the works?" And so I did that. I don't think it's gone anywhere, but yeah. So lots of just like odd little moments trying to find ways to bring in.
I mean, but that's how it usually starts, right? You just find all the pockets that you could, donate your work to or put your work into and hope that something gets attention. And I'm sure there's so many people that never get their stuff pulled. And that's really cool that you were able to, snag some notice from people in the industry.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, I'm sure you can both understand this very much. Like, it's very hard because it's just constant ups and downs. And I'm not like a mentally stable person anyway. Like, I'm very
Me either.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it's so weird how like one morning you can wake up feeling like you're going nowhere, and then one thing happens and suddenly you feel like you're on top of the world, and then it collapses and you're back at the bottom, and it's just constant.
Yeah.
But also it's a lot more exciting. Entertaining.
I'm so sorry to go back for a second. For the listeners at home, can we explain who Tracy is?
So Tracy is a producer at Red Siren Entertainment, and so she co-founded the company. She's based in Los Angeles.
Ariana, can we get a review of this episode's film?
This episode's film. I think that most people should be are already aware of this film. It was up for tons of awards and things the year it was released. It's Whiplash. I don't know the director, but it's a fantastic film about a boy who's going to a music academy. I'm assuming it's like collegiate music academy. I don't think it's like high school. And there's like 2 levels of music class by different teachers in the upper music class is the teacher's name is Fletcher, is extremely intense and really pushes his students to extremes to try to see their talent. And it's about his journey through trying to become one of the greatest symphonic, is that the word?
Drummers?
Symphony drummer.
Jazz band drummer, maybe?
Jazz band? Symphony? I don't know. They weren't too specific in the movie, which is great because, if you're going to see that movie, you should be a little bit aware. And if you don't, then you don't need to be aware. They do it all for you, which is fantastic. It's very well made, very well written, very well acted. Not a huge cast, which is lovely. And very subtle, which I love in a drama. And I loved this one. I would give this one... If I had to grade this movie, I would probably give it like an A-. It's minus because the ending always, like, I get the pinpoint and the impact of what they did at the ending, but because I'm a simpleton, I like movies to be easily complete. And this one left me hanging just a little bit. So it's an A-, but it's pretty flawless otherwise.
Michail. Response.
Yeah. So first of all, it was directed by Damien Chazelle.
Thank you.
Who I'm personally a big fan of. He's also done obviously La La Land. And
Me too.
Yeah.
First Man.
Yeah, First Man. I still have to see that actually. I still haven't seen that, which is a damn shame.
That's genuinely one of my top 20 favorite movies ever.
Okay, I will definitely.
For whatever that's worth.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so for context, Whiplash is one of my like top 3 films personally ever. Like I love that film so much, and I love the script. I think it's a really really written script. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. It's very subtle and it's got a lot of really great subtle moments. Like the thing that I just watched it today again before coming on here. Fletcher pronounces his name wrong the entire movie. At the beginning when he introduces himself as Andrew Neiman, and then for the rest of the movie he's referred to as Neiman by Fletcher. Like small tiny things that are like great details to me. I personally love the ending and I understand why people don't. I'm a big fan of like, you don't have to wrap it all like in a tight bow. I think it just like you see, and then your mind can like run away with the rest. Especially like they talk so much in the movie about like Charlie Parker, and how he like died and alone without friends, but one of the greatest drummers in history. It kind of lets the audience like imagine that without having to show it. The cast is awesome. I don't know if this is something you were planning on bringing up, Andrew said. It started.
I could just cut it out if it's right. No,
the joys of editing.
Less knowledgeable in any way. Just
I cut around the guest. I figured that'll bring him back.
Awesome. Yeah, it started as a short film. Because no one thought they could make a movie about jazz drumming exciting. And so Damien Chazelle made a proof of concept, and it still has J.K. Simmons, but it's a different lead actor, and I can't remember his name.
I got that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But it's the exact same scene. It's one scene from the film, and they filmed it as a proof of concept. It's funny, like you're absolutely right in calling it a drama, and yet, like in a lot of ways, to me, they almost make it like a horror.
Yeah.
Even the opening shot, right? He's like there at the end of the hall playing the drums, and you're just like following from Fletcher's perspective, kind of like Jaws, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That definitely crossed my mind watching it. I went away with like, what if you were to film, a rom-com, like a drama, or a drama, like a horror, like this one did. It just really played with the mood of how you set a scene, both visually and with music. And I definitely agree with you that it was like, I know that it's a drama, but it felt different wasn't just, watching everything unfold.
It's so cool to think about, like, I think there's a really fun thing to have this contrast, right, with stories that aren't necessarily, like, what's a recent example? Like The Menu recently was like this weird fine dining horror comedy mix type of thing. And I always think the contrast plays so much. Or like there's that scene in, what's it, Kingsman, when they're in the church and they're beating the crap out of everyone and they're playing like, I think they're playing like Freebird or something, which is not the song you'd think to play then. And
for me personally, the ending was it kind of game changing in a way. It's kind of like how do I explain this? The ending for me personally was like exhilarating. It left on the high note, and it was kind of like, well, where would the story go from here? It's done. It's ended, and it's kind of like a big finale, and then it ends, and it's kind of like, yeah, okay, that was the appropriate ending because everything's got to be downhill from there for those characters in that abusive relationship, and it's kind of like giving them one last moment of victory before everything's probably going to go to shit for Andrew Neiman. I don't know. Yeah. That's just my interpretation. No, and by the way, I just want to say this is like a A+ movie for me, genuinely. I love this movie. The movie was kind of like, oh wow, this is really good budget filmmaking. I mean it was made for, well, I'll get to that later, how the exact amount, but it was made for very low for a Hollywood budget movie, with name actors in them. Now, I'm not going to say huge at the time, but you got the guy from Spider-Man, was as the brutal drum instructor. But the ending, it was kind of like, when I saw it, it's one of those endings where it's like, that's against the rules. It's kind of like you have to have a falling action, and so it's like, no, screw that. We're just gonna stop at the end. Yeah.
I think that's probably why it feels rickety to somebody like me, because I'm like,
sure,
I like family feel good movies. Like my top 3 or 4 favorite movies are all really easy to enjoy kind of stuff. So I like when I finish a movie to go, that was good. And this one doesn't do that. It leaves you way up here in the intensity and of the moment and in your face, and then it just like closes it up. And it's cool. I think it feels like artistically is really brilliant.
Well, and also it's a lot of movies, right? Like when they have like a central thesis statement, right? A lot of them have like this argument that they're making, and maybe this is just me, but like I feel like one of the reasons I love Whiplash so much is it doesn't tell you what to think; it just asks a question. Right? What does it take to be great, and is it worth it? And from each character, you can see their opinions on it, right? Even at the very end, like the Neiman and Fletcher, they're both very happy with it. But if you look at the shot of his dad, who's waiting in the wings, he's got this like sinking look on his face because for him it's not. And I mean, you talked about the writing, like you guys mentioned how good the writing was, and like it's there in every scene, right? It's that question is asked in every scene in some form, spoken or unspoken, and you get to see it play out without one or the other being correct necessarily. And to me, like that's the best thing a film can do, right? Is if it can make me like not give me the answer, but like make me question my own answers on things.
Yeah.
Should we get to the facts?
Yes.
Awesome. Here I got my handy-dandy papers. After his feature-length debut, a black-and-white musical called Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, writer-director Damien Chazelle, did I get that pronunciation correct? Chazelle? Okay, cool. Writer-director Damien Chazelle began to shop around his script for another musical. However, that project would need to be put on hold, as his first film failed to attract attention from investors. So, Chazelle went to work writing a smaller project, very loosely based on his own experiences as a drumming student at Princeton High School, or rather the pressure felt by Chazelle. That project became Whiplash. To back up for just a moment, Chazelle loved films as a child, but decided to pursue drumming in his adolescent years. However, Chazelle went back to his original love after coming to the conclusion that he was not naturally gifted as a musician. So it's kind of like he knew he could get kind of far in drumming, like he could gain some recognition, but he wouldn't be one of the greats. He just knew that naturally. So and he decided to go back to filmmaking.
And then he made a film about being a great drummer. Anyways, go ahead.
It's super interesting though, because if you look at all of his films, at least all the ones I've seen, like if you look at La La Land and you look at Babylon, they all have that undertone, like that thematic run line of like becoming great or succeeding.
Yeah.
And like the sacrifices. Like I think all three of those films are just a different take on that central topic. Which is just really cool to see because they're so different in final product, but like they originate from the same question. And I don't know, as someone who like screenwrites, that's always really cool to think, right? Is what you can do, how different you can make the same.
Yeah, the fundamental of like possibilities are endless. It rings true in any creative endeavor, especially writing. And it is kind of shocking how, just a simple like central line can veer off into so many different areas. And that's one of the reasons why I like films and storytelling is that that question is like human. It can be in like so many different kinds of stories from so many different perspectives. And that's why I like films. It kind of brings people together and helps you see something on the way somebody else lives on the other side of the world is the same question that you've asked yourself in your, little 1-bedroom apartment over here. So
yeah.
I think it's very, very cool. And it's awesome that this guy is like doing it with so many different movies and kind of like making us pay attention to it that way.
Yeah.
Kind of like variations on, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say like variations on a theme.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, my favorite example of like this, how things can be exactly the same and yet different is Taken and Finding Nemo have the same plot.
Never thought about that.
Right? Like it's an overprotective dad who has to go to rescue their kid after their kid gets taken. And then ultimately like, learn to let them go or whatever. Like nothing about those movies is at all similar. And yet the plot is almost identical and it's amazing.
I'm never going to forget that now. It never would have crossed my mind before that.
You're right.
Oh, God.
Wow.
I love it.
Yeah, it's there are so many examples of that throughout film history of like I can name the obvious example of how like Star Wars is the first half of Star Wars is basically like a remake of Hidden Fortress, but anyway, that's more direct remake. That's me being very nerdy about it.
I like when the nerd comes out.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Thank you. Well, here we go. Before the Oscar-winning version of Whiplash would come to fruition, Chazelle still had the problem of getting financing. After trying to attract investors for 6 months, filmmaker Jason Reitman got a hold of the script, read it, and fell in love with it. Jason Reitman is the director of Thank You for Smoking and Juno. His producing partner's company, Right of Way Films, and another company agreed to finance a short film version of his feature script. That second company was Blumhouse Productions. Blumhouse is most well known for producing horror films such as the Paranormal Activity series and M. Night Shyamalan's Split, as well as dramas such as Jordan Peele's Get Out and Spike Lee's BlacKkKlansman. So, figure that's a cool connection.
Yeah, I love Blumhouse. No wonder it feels a little bit like a horror.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
Seeing it in the beginning and being like, "This is a Blumhouse picture."
Yeah.
What?
Kind of right up his alley if he was to even more focus on Oscar-winning films. Jason Blum.
Yeah. No, I mean that's wild because I had no idea about that connection, but it makes so much sense.
Absolutely. The short film version of Whiplash is essentially an excerpt from that longer script. I've seen the short film. Specifically the scene where the characters of Fletcher, the sadistic music instructor, and Andrew Neiman, an ambitious drummer, have their first practice session. That short film won the Short Film Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, and the feature was able to attract financing, with investors putting in a total of $3.3 million towards its budget. Not a lot of money for a feature-length Hollywood film.
No, that's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing.
And the production value is so high, right? Like I mean, the film looks incredible. I think it's stunning. And to be fair, the editing on it is a masterclass. So that's I'm sure part of it. But it's that budget number always astounds me.
You know, it's interesting because I listened to the. This is going to be a total side tangent for a second. I listened to the audio commentary for the movie. First of all, it's J.K. Simmons and Damien Chazelle, and they're both making fun of Miles Teller for not showing up, and he's like, he probably fell asleep in his own puke. That they keep repeating that throughout the audio commentary. That's why he couldn't make it today to the audio commentary. He fell asleep in his own puke. Secondly, no, but more to the point, Chazelle talked about how he knew he had to shoot the film on digital, which, like most filmmakers make films on digital, he prefers film. But he shot on digital, and he really leaned into the aesthetic of digital, at least the capabilities of it at that time, which were like to have yellow hues, green hues, red hues, and to kind of make it look a little digital, you know, not organic. So he really leaned into that. Speaking of the visual qualities of the film,
yeah, and it works really well in my opinion, right? Like because the lighting is definitely done in a way that is not like realistic, right? It's got weird, like, I guess, surreal quality to it.
It's a melodrama.
Yeah, and which is odd, even though everything is so like brought up to 100, it feels very realistic and grounded, despite all these different elements that are, like, as you said, taking it to like a melodramatic place. Yeah. Even like the dialogue, right, is quite over the top.
By the way,
that dinner scene, woof.
Yeah, that was uncomfortable for me. Can I just say for a second, I love melodramas, like from the 1950s. Like, there's this director named Douglas Sirk. I'm not, by the way, when I say melodramatic, that's a compliment. I love the Rock Hudson melodramas from the 1950s, so I mean that as the highest praise possible, just for the listeners out there. Although J.K. Simmons would stay on to play Fletcher in the feature film, Andrew Neiman was played in the short film version by Johnny Simmons, no relation to J.K. Johnny Simmons is probably most well known for playing young Neil in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. In the short film, J.K. Simmons flubbed a line which became, quote, "If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will fuck you like a pig," unquote. However, Simmons refused to repeat this mistake when filming the feature out of embarrassment. So, Chazelle and his editor took the line from the short, copied and pasted it into the feature version. Yeah.
And it's a great line. Like the version that it ends up with is better. Like it's so ridiculous of a statement, but it works.
Yeah. What was the original line? Do you know?
I just based on the context, I don't know what the line is, but based on the context, I would say, "If you deliberately sabotage my band, I will gut you like a pig." That's what I'm assuming.
Oh.
I mean, I would assume that, but I have no source on that one. Same.
Yeah, it was meant to be "gut you like a pig."
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it ends up being "fuck you like a pig."
Yeah, makes sense. That's all the better.
Yeah, it really adds a layer of ridiculous. It's funny that line does stand out. Like, of all of the insults that he threw around, that was definitely a big one that I remember, and I think most people would remember it during the film. And it's one that J.K. Simmons wishes we wouldn't. Too bad.
The dialogue in this movie.
Oh
yeah,
it's great because I think sometimes, right, that you hear people express a wish for all dialogue to be like realistic. And I don't think this movie has that at all.
No.
So glad it doesn't.
Yes.
Like the dining room scene with the family, right? Like that back and forth. It's very like, I don't know, like, you know how Aaron Sorkin characters always like instantly amazing responses. It's that Naaman has like these really quick responses that, you know, witty and clever, and his dad jumps in and like, but it makes the movie so much more entertaining. And at the end of the day, like, that's what I'm going to see, right? Is like,
yes,
be entertained.
It's sorry.
No, please go ahead.
It's a dark story, and it also has to do its job of being entertainment, which is what movies are for.
Right.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for good acting. I mean, could you imagine like a script like this with bad actors? It would just be like, it would be so cringy. And I'm grateful that they found like a perfect alchemy of people. And I really loved the dad-son relationship.
Yeah, I find it really interesting to compare the initial short to the film.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that sorry, what was the original actor's name again?
Looking it up right now, Johnny Simmons. Yeah.
Not to say that Johnny Simmons did a bad job. It was a different performance, but it was a very good performance.
Mm-hmm.
But I so liked what Miles Teller brought to the role. There's this weird smugness and arrogance that leaps in, which wasn't really there in the short.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of like when actors can do shit subtly. And it was in spades in this movie. I think all the actors really nailed this, like these subtle moments that just it's like giving color to a black and white picture, a photograph, right? Like it just adds this entirely new element, and they all did such a good job.
Mm-hmm. Bad acting can just tank a movie, and that movie, Whiplash, is the opposite of bad acting. It's the best acting. You know, I'm gonna wax philosophical for a second, if I may. I'm gonna say this is my theory, Michail. I want to hear your thoughts on this about narrative filmmaking, about narrative films. My feeling about narrative films is outside of the camera. The three pillars of narrative filmmaking are the writing, the acting, and the editing. If those elements work, you got at least a good film. Now, if you have sound, all the better, but you can do silent film. If the writing and the acting and the editing's great, it's gonna fly. And I think this movie is great on all those 3 points.
Yeah, no, I mean it's excellent on those points. The editing was done to the music.
Mm-hmm.
A way the acting really brings the most out of what is already a brilliant script.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really hammers home that idea of, you know, filmmaking is collaborative.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, like I have simultaneously got incredibly low self-confidence and massive arrogance and ego, which
same here.
I suspect is most people in the entertainment industry have a little bit of both.
Yes.
And so, you know, I will go to either end where it's like, oh, like my script is the most amazing script ever. It's not. It'll be good sometimes or even great, but like it just can't be that good. And then the flip side is, you know, I've seen scripts that were not so great become amazing because of like the performances given. But when everything works together, it's such a privilege to see.
Absolutely. During the scene where Miles Teller, who replaced Johnny Simmons in the feature, tackles J.K. Simmons, 2 of Simmons's ribs were cracked. With 2 days left, with 2 days left of filming, Simmons soldiered on. And
for the fractured ribs is incredibly painful. I've done it 4 times.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, it was fractured and not completely broken. But all 4 times I tried surfing, which is why I never try surfing again.
4 separate occasions?
Yeah, I went surfing 4 times and 4 times fractured.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not a smart man, apparently.
You were thorough. You gave it every chance you could.
Yep. Well, yeah. Well, and maybe we'll cover this later, but given this shooting schedule they had, that must have really, because that lasts for like 4 weeks.
We are going to get to that.
Okay.
Whiplash was shot in 19 days. 2 days in New York. Yeah. 2 days in New York and the rest in Los Angeles. So yeah, that was going to be my next fact. That's a crazy.
It's bonkers.
Yeah. For a movie this quality. And by the way, I heard that a day of the filming was cut from the final movie.
I mean, the schedule, I think that they were like 14-hour shooting days. Because I think it was because they wanted to like get it into the festival run.
Yes.
And I mean, okay, first of all, I don't know what day that the fractured ribs happened, but I can't imagine you can't put it on hold. You've got to work through agony in every movement. And you're already on a schedule that's so tight. I mean, I don't know if I could.
Simmons. Well, his ribs were cracked, I believe. Is that the same thing as a fracture? I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
I think.
I play one on TV though. No, but Simmons had 2 days left of filming, so whatever that's worth.
Still painful, but at least 2 days you can muscle through it.
Yeah.
Speaking of injuries and accidents, during the third week of production, Chazelle got into a car accident. His vehicle was totaled, and he was taken to the hospital with a possible concussion. To ensure the film was completed, Chazelle was back on the set the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know, I admire that, and it's also like, good God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and especially given that you talk about art imitating life or life imitating art.
Yeah.
Given what happened to Naaman's character.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, was that added before or after?
Yeah. No, they just took the camera and it was intentional. Yeah, they just CGI'd Miles Teller to Chazelle's head. That's for the record. That's a joke to the audience at home. All of this, by the way, is libelous. Our facts here. Chazelle's interpretation of the fate of Andrew Naaman following the ending of Whiplash is somewhat bleak. According to an interview Chazelle gave to Screen Crush, Chazelle believes Naaman will end up broke, drunk, and dead at the age of 34, like his hero, the real-life drummer Charlie Parker. So yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen after the end of the movie, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, 100%. It's also quite funny because the real Charlie Parker notoriously claimed to not practice. And like a lot of the stories they tell like are a very twisted perception of what actually happened with him. And so I just think that's a really interesting like character choice with both Fletcher and Naaman. And how they look up to this idealized version of him and are satisfied with the sort of the potential terrible end. But they've also like completely ignored a lot of the parts of him that are probably more human. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Just so long as you're good at your job, at your passion, then everything else is worth it.
Absolutely.
I think that's probably like an honest representation of how some fans of his probably like feel about his work now, you know. It's like maybe they look into his life and maybe they look into the struggle or the things he actually said, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that are just there for what they get from him, from his talent and what he's remembered for. And that's they dream up some version of him that is felt within his music.
Yeah.
Like many other stars that we've lost. And so I think that film-wise, like, I'm sure there's some people that would be, like, those facts aren't right, or there's stuff that they left out about him, or they're doing an injustice, they're making something up. And like, after you mentioned that, I feel like if he really is just another fan of his in the movie, then it would make sense that he's got some dream version of him that he talks about and represents in the movie. So I think that's pretty cool. Again, another example of really brilliant writing and understanding the character.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like a really interesting look at, like, I mean, talking about that ending again, the people we idolize as being the peak of their professions. Right? Michael Jordan, for example, was notoriously difficult in many different ways. Like scamming his own teammates out of money by like pre-recording horse races, and then playing them when they came over, which is a ridiculous thing to do. Or, Cristiano Ronaldo in football, or I guess here they'd call it soccer. And a lot of people who achieve that level of success can be not very nice people, and not. They're a particular brand of driven. I'm sure that, there's plenty in the entertainment industry, and again, it doesn't say this is right or wrong, but it's a really good. I always find that a particularly interesting thing about greatness, right? Like, do you have to be this sort of selfish monster, or at least somewhat of a brick, to become that good at what you want to?
Yeah.
And I personally don't believe that is the case, but the movie doesn't even ask that question. It asks, okay, if that was the case, would it be worth it? I don't know. Sorry, I'm rambling, but it's
right.
Yeah.
My feeling about that question is that there is such a thing as a talented asshole, but you do not have to be an asshole to be talented. My feeling about it is you just have to just be a little different in some way. That's kind of why they pay us, or not me, but that's kind of why people look for talent, is because they have a talent that's different from other people. And so that means that person's different from others. I gotta say, there are some parallels to this movie and filmmaking, because it's kind of like it's amazing that people sign on to my films because they like working with me, which is very nice. It's a huge compliment. And at the same time, I feel kind of selfish, because I'm like, okay, everybody, we're going to spend the next few months on my idea, and it's going to be totally worth it. Like, that takes ego right there. And usually it ends up working out. And so but also shows great faith and trust. Anyway, my point being is I love you all.
We love you back, Andrew.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And but it's interesting, right? Like, on that point, like, yes, everyone's signing up to make your vision, but it's also theirs, right? Like, okay, let's take like set decoration, right? And the set decorator, like, they have a very specific idea that they'll come, that they'll bring to it, and they'll be working to make their best version of what they do. I maybe this is idealistic, but like, I like to think that everyone like has that thing they're really excited about, that they're trying to like get right. And film is basically finding a bunch of people who can match that up together.
Yeah, what a miracle it is, right? You get that many people together to create the same vision. It's like,
yeah, it's insane, because I hate people. Like, people are scary and terrifying and anxiety inducing, and I'm just not great at I get nervous and things like that, or just anxious and collaborative. I can get stressed and all of these things. And yet, if you have this thing that you're trying to get to, it almost makes it easier because everyone's pushing and wants to create something awesome. Yeah.
And that's
Aside, I got to see your guys' short film, by the way. I really enjoyed it.
thank you.
Yeah, I forgot to email you and let you know that I looked at it, but I did really enjoy it.
You heard it here, folks. Michail Eggelhoefer recommends A New Life for Anna on the Independent Creator Studios YouTube channel. Like and subscribe.
Absolutely.
It's professional recognition. This is awesome.
Exactly.
The final film, Whiplash, was a success, winning both the Audience Award and U.S. Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival 2014, as well as earning $49 million at the box office. Damien Chazelle finally had the interest in investors to make the musical script into a film, La La Land. Michail, Ariana, closing thoughts on Whiplash.
Absolutely a fantastic movie. If you're into dramas or intense, small stories, it's absolutely worth it. And it deserved all the recognition it got. It's beautifully acted, amazingly written. And it's very intense to watch. It'll definitely distract anybody who's trying to do something else.
I'll be a little greedy. And say a couple of things.
Please do.
Thank you. I think Whiplash is a really excellent example that you can do something incredibly different that no one believes in, and if you can just get the right people on board, and find a way to get to the point, like put it in front of these people, you can get it made. No one wanted to make a jazz drama film, and then he made a short, and then he got given 3.8 million, was it? Or 3.3?
3.3.
3.3 million, and turned very little money, right, essentially for Hollywood into one of my favorite films ever. And so I think it's something to be said for, like, it can be quite demoralizing, at least for me on the screenwriting side, when you hear, oh, this script's not mainstream enough, or this script's not hitting this audience enough. And then sometimes that's true, and sometimes things, need to be a little bit more open, but at other times it's just maybe it's not the person who's ready yet. And I think that is awesome. And secondly, I think this was his, it was his second feature?
Yeah.
Second feature, 19 days, 3.3 million budget. I mean, like, all of that is bonkers. It's completely nuts, and is exactly what filmmaking is about. And I think that's so cool. And so if that can be done, if that film can be made in 19 days, and then I think it was like edited in like 20 something days or less, maybe even.
That's the shocking part to me.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing was like 40 something days or 50 days, which
that's nothing.
It's ludicrous. Sorry, I'm stutter.
I do too.
I cannot imagine the amount of stress and pressure and all of that. And so it's just so cool. I'm rambling now. It's just so cool. And if you haven't seen the movie, to anyone listening, please go see it. I would be surprised if you hadn't, but definitely check it out.
Okay. Michail, last question for you. What do you have to promote?
So at the moment, I am in post-production on an episode of a web series I was in the writing room for. The title is still not out yet. I think people can find me on Twitter. It's MichailEggs. So at Michail Eggs, or on Instagram at Michail_A_E.
Listeners, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to shoot us an email at independentcareerstudios@gmail.com. If you like this episode, please write a review and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, or YouTube. We'd love to hear your feedback. Behind the Flicks was created by myself and Ariana. I researched, wrote, and edited this episode. My name is Aaron Gentile. This has been an Independent Creative Studios production. Although J.K. Simmons would stay on to play Fletcher in the feature film, Andrew Neiman, Neiman? It's Neiman,
technically. Yeah. But I thought it was Neiman too this whole time. But he's right. He does say it differently in the beginning.
Take 3. Although J.K. Simmons would stay on to play Fletcher in the feature film, Andrew Neiman. Take 4. Although J.K. Simmons, it's very hot in this room, guys. I can't have the window open for sound reasons.
Yes, and you.